I see. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is an ordinary council meeting, Tuesday, 25th October, 2022. It's 2:02 p.m. I declare the meeting open. The Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, all the councillors are present, which is nice to see, and we thank, as the Mayor, thank retiring councillor Keith Braney and Grant Robinson for the service that they've yielded and given to the community during their term on council. They're not standing to re-election, and we'll miss them. For those of us that managed to get re-elected, for those that don't, we'll still miss them. And thank you very much, Greg Luck, for being here, and Wayne Murray in the public gallery. Thank you also, the directors of council, Alex Woodward, Elise Blaine and Peter Porch. Are there any other matters coming under apologies? Are there any late reports?
No late reports.
I asked any elected members to indicate whether they have any interest, personal or via a close associate, as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or any conflict as described in the council's code of conduct for councillors in any item included in the agenda. I take that silence as a confirmation that there's no conflict matter. Item 2 on page 6 of the agenda is confirmation of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
The minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on 27 September 2022 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Is there a second? Councillor Bruni. Do you wish to say anything? Councillor Bruni, do you wish to say anything?
No, thank you.
Is there any discussion on the matter? I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against, I declare carried unanimously. Item 2.2, council workshop, 11 October. The details are in the agenda on page 7. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Woods.
Thank you. I'll move that the council notes the information.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Churchill. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against, I declare motion carried unanimously. Item 2.3. Spring Emergency Municipal Emergency Management Committee minutes. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Wood.
Thank you. I'll move that the minutes of the Glamorgan Spring Bay Municipal Emergency Management Committee meeting held on the 21st of September 2022 be received and noted.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Browning. Any discussion?
Yes, if
Yes,
I may,
please.
Mayor. Just a couple of the issues that are of concern, which is on page 9, the Tasman Highway speed limit reduction proposal at the Pondering Frog. There's been obviously the letter sent, and it'd be interesting to see what the state growth has to say about that one. And also the speed limit Swansea North End 100 kilometres moved to before the corner, SES concerned. It is a weird place to put a 100-kilometre speed limit. So hopefully that they can see some sense. I know, we've tried to reduce speed limits throughout the community several times and with no luck, but good luck with this one.
Any other comments?
I'll just to you, Mr. Mayor, I just had a comment about that piece of road through you, Mr. Mayor. The council may be aware that there's been a lot of road improvements on the highway identified and commitments made, political commitments made. We've got to await the detail of those. Some of it definitely falls within our municipality, and the Pondering Frog road alignment through there is not good. And it is one of the areas, along with Cherry Tree Hill, that have been identified for road improvements. So whilst that doesn't solve the issue in the short term in terms of the speed restriction, it's good to note that there's a long-term plan to improve the road alignment through there.
Thank you, General Manager. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Next item is 2.4, page 13, minutes of Glamorgan Spring Bay Audit Panel. Do I have a motion? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that council receives and notes the attached minutes of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council Audit Panel meeting held on the 20th of September 2022.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Churchill. Councillor Arnold, do you wish to speak to the motion?
The officer responsible for the minutes always provides very informative minutes. So I think it's all there.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make any comment? Yes, Councillor Browning.
Mayor, given the financial situation of the municipality over the previous years, when you read a sentence or a paragraph that reads, "It has been pleasing to note the panel's contribution towards the ongoing improvement of council's financial governance, resulting in the excellent end-of-year financial audit opinion." That sort of thing is very rewarding to councillors who have been fighting for that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make any comment? Yes, Councillor Churchill.
Councillor Brini just stole my thunder. So that's fine. Thank you.
It's nice to know that two people have a like mind.
I'll repay it later.
Anyone else? Well, I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hands. Against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Now, item 3 on page 15, public question time. Now, public question time gives any member of the public the opportunity to freely ask a question on any council-related matter. Answers will be given immediately if the capacity exists, otherwise it'll be answered at a later date. Now, first question is, the first item is questions on notice. General Manager, there are 2 questions I understand on notice, is that correct?
We've got 2 questions received in writing from Mr. Greg Luck, who's in the gallery today. I've spoken to Mr. Luck and he's happy for me to read them out. So a response will be provided at the next council meeting.
Scott, just point of order there, Mr. Chair. Is that questions on notice or questions without notice?
Questions without notice. I
Without
thought it
notice.
was. Yeah.
We're on- you-
There's no questions on notice.
There's no questions on notice, but you said on notice. So
I did say on notice. I thought because it was typed, it was on notice.
No,
not,
there's nil.
well, there are nil on notice, one of them without notice, but we have typed one as the one from
Yeah.
Mr. Luck. Please read out the questions if you can.
So sorry about that. So the
That's my fault.
there's written questions from Mr. Luck, but there also may be questions from Mr. Wayne Murray, who's in the gallery as well. So Mr. Luck, there's 2 questions. The first one, in the interest of the community information, could the General Manager confirm the number of electors enrolled on the updated General Manager's electoral roll for 2022? And for comparison, provide the previous total. As ratepayers may be aware of the deficiencies in the previous roll, could the General Manager identify the steps taken to ensure the roll is now current and kept up to date in the future? with particular regards to removing enrolments where properties are sold. Would the general manager detail the definition of owners occupiers or occupiers occupancy used by himself in assessing applicants as being eligible for enrolment on this year's roll? Ratepayers may be aware that there was no previous definition. For example, no minimum period of occupancy required, in brackets. Therefore, for example, agricultural workers residing and working in our area, if they decide to be on the roll, the question is, are they eligible to be on it or not? Under the previous criteria, occupiers were deemed to be ineligible to be on the state electoral roll. I'll respond to that in writing at the next meeting. I'll just say a few things though. Mr. Luck is correct. The general manager's electoral roll was revised this year. It was I wouldn't say significantly out of date, but it hadn't been revised for some time. So the time was opportune to do that. Notification was sent out to all the people on the roll approximately 4 months ago to seek, and this was done with the endorsement of the Tasmanian Electoral Commission, who provided the form. The form has been updated. I don't have to go into the detail about that, but the application form is actually simpler and easier than the previous one. The roll number did change. I haven't got the exact figures to date, but there is less numbers on the general manager's the revised general manager's electoral roll than there was previously. And I'll have those exact numbers in my written response. I'm confident as much as I can be in terms of my responsibility as a general manager to keep the roll up to date under the Act. I'm confident that enough has been done to do that. I can never guarantee, obviously, because a lot of the information that we require of the electors is also reliant on them being open and honest and transparent with us. But I have to say the question that Mr. Luck refers to of occupier is a very difficult one, and I might say somewhat grey. I will endeavour to get some more clarity around what constitutes an occupier, and then what constitutes that occupier's eligibility to be on the general manager role. It's a valid question. The second question from Mr. Luck is, I think it relates directly to a matter on the agenda today. I am concerned about the closure of the Section 24 Committee for Marine Infrastructure, with the councillors voting in what would be, in inverted commas, caretaker mode in any government, a failure of the Local Government Act 1993. It is appropriate for outgoing councillors to make this decision. Is it appropriate for outgoing councillors to make this decision when they will not be around to wear the consequences? Has consideration been given to the effect of removing community input and local government knowledge into the grants funding from MAST? That's the second part of the question, but that's fine. Was there a final Section 24 committee meeting where the members voted to close the committee? I'll respond again in general terms and do so in writing with the detail, but the Marine Infrastructure Section 24 Committee has been a committee that has been identified fairly early on in terms of Council's endorsement to undertake a review of all the Section 24 committees of Council. There's about 15 or 16 of them. This is one. In corresponding with the committee members, and I have got some written responses here, just simply asking the question about the value of the committee and the way they see the value. There's certainly a majority of the members that would support the committee's disbandment and support the recommendation on the report today. These decisions aren't taken lightly, but council, I think the reality of it, for not only for council but also committee members, is to reflect and ask themselves what value are they providing, and do they see value in the committee continue? So that's the process that's been gone through here. But I'll respond in writing at the next meeting, and still certainly open to having ongoing discussions with any committee member that has concerns.
Thank you, General
you.
Manager. Mr. Murray, you've got some questions to ask, I understand.
I'm afraid so, Mayor. Thank you. I note in Peter's report, the work carried out slashing the roadside verges on Hoods Road and other locations. But I wonder whether council is aware of the amount of debris left behind after that, not just on the verges, but also on the road surface, and perhaps most critically in the drains.
Thank you for that question. I don't know whether we can answer that directly, Mr. Porch, or would you want to make inquiry before you are able to make any comment on that matter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to make a response to that. Look, certainly we have responsibility for the drains and for the road surfaces as well. We have, it's difficult to program everything to work at the same time. Most of our, when road verges are kept in good condition, there's not a lot of cleanup needed afterwards, but some of our roads haven't been done for a very long time. In some instances, we've also, with the type of slashes that are available today, we're able to do the trees as well along there, and that's going to create some more. So there would probably be some areas that could use a bit of a tidy up, more so than what we necessarily have done, simply because of the probably additional vegetation that's going to be slashed as a result of it. We rely a little bit on our contractors to advise us if we need to follow up in some areas. Our works manager also follows up pretty fastidiously in most of our areas. So there may be the odd thing that goes through to the keeper, but I'd like to think we're on top of most of those things. And certainly we have continuation of programs that look to clean and ensure that the roadside drainage is working as effectively as we can.
Mr. Murray, could you say again the name of the road that you've been specifically referred to, please?
Well, I particularly noted this on Hoods Road and Van Leeuwen Crescent, which comes off Hoods Road. There is significant buildup in the drains there. I noted it as I came in today. A number of us thought that this would be cleared up, the following day or the day after, and I'm now not sure. Maybe it's a fortnight later, and it clearly hasn't. So I just wish to bring that to council's attention, particularly as the drains may cause some greater problems later on.
Mr. Porch, would you make a specific note of Hoods Road, please? Thank you very much. Mr. Murray, you have another question.
I do, I'm afraid.
Don't be afraid, please ask it.
This one is rather longer and a bit more complex, so I'll crave your indulgence while I attempt to make it as brief as possible, but also as clear as possible. I'm happy to clarify things that you may need.
If you could take it slowly, perhaps,
I
for
will
those
try
that
to
need
do
to pay
that.
attention, have a chance.
Council might, or I suspect is more likely to not remember that 15 months ago, I asked Council whether an updated profit and loss report for the Prossett Plains Raw Water Scheme for 2020-2021 financial year could be provided. Despite a fair amount of diligence on my part, it appears not to be available in the public domain. I'm not quite sure what state it's in. I do realize that there are complications with that, so I understand why it might have taken a while. I note that the previous years, that's 2021-22 financial profit and loss report for that project is also has provisional figures. I'm hoping that will also be provided eventually when the figures are finalized. I'm trusting that you will take these as continuing requests rather than my question. My question is as follows. Given the somewhat shambolic state, and I'll happily justify the use of that adjective, of the quarterly profit and loss reports regarding this project, it's very difficult.
Which period, Mr. Murray?
Every period.
Can you recall the latest one that you felt was a bit shambolic?
March this year, for example. I think the exception that doesn't appear that way is probably the June report of this current year, which I'm hoping, and this is my my question, I'm hoping that those figures in the June report are at least a reasonable approximation of what is likely to be the finalized figures. To my eye, they certainly seem like they may be close to that. So the question is that the case, that these figures are likely to be close to the finalized figures for that financial year? And if so, my interpretation is that this project 2 years later is still not washing its face financially and will be a continuing white elephant and major financial burden on the council into the future. Does council share that view, and do they have plans afoot to rectify the situation? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. I imagine that question won't be answered orally. It'll have to be in writing. The points raised are important. And I'll ask the general manager the response. Could it be published on the web for all to see, the response?
Well, certainly issue, Mr. Mayor, the financial information around the PROSA raw water scheme is publicly available information. I just would like to make the comment, though, that unlike other financial reports, the PROSA raw water scheme is a report that's got to be produced based on it's certainly every financial year, but it's a long-term agreement that council is in with the other party. It's a 30-year agreement, and I think we're 3 years down the track. The scheme itself is identified in our asset management plan, our hydraulic asset management plan, as an asset owned by council. I think its value is something in the order of 8.5 million. I stand corrected. To answer your question about the long term, is council aware of council is certainly aware of the fact that at a point in time in the future, there will be maintenance requirements, etc., that will come on board as a result of that asset deterioration. The current status with the financials is that the user, TASL, pay for the volumetric use of the water. Sometimes that's a timing issue, and I think I'm correct in saying this, Ms. Blaine. There's a timing issue with when we receive that money, that can affect those profit and loss, because it depends on when. But they pay for the volumetric use of the water and the interest on the loan. That's TASL. So over a point in time, yes, debt will reduce and the asset will be paid off. But there is the other component that by the time we reach year 30, it is highly likely that there are going to be maintenance requirements on the scheme. That will be the responsibility of Glamorgan Spring Bay, unless things can change.
And General Manager, you'll, in your written response, detail those matters. Is that not correct?
Yes. What we can provide you, I can provide you the breakdown of the profit and loss and what it is in a point in time. To also answer your question, I think the figures for June will reflect as accurately as possible the end of financial year position, which, by the way, would have changed already, as you would appreciate. Yeah.
Thank you, General Manager. Gentlemen, thank you both for those questions. They're important questions and much appreciated. You please stay on until the closed session arises. Item 4 on the agenda is Planning Authority section. There are nil reports for that, so we don't need to deal with any matters as a planning authority. Item 5 on page 17 of the agenda, financial reports for period ending 30 September 2022. Can I have a motion, please? Robinson, Councillor Robinson, thank you.
The council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended 30 September 2022.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Simons. You wish to speak to the motion, councillor Robinson?
No, only that the financial reports appear to be once again showing the council in good shape and progressing towards its strategic goals.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone other than the seconder wish to speak? Oh, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is through you to the General Manager or possibly Mr. Peter Porch. On page 8 and 9 of the attachments is the capital works detail. My question is, the repatriation of the Buckland Walk seems to have disappeared into some ethos. It's actually going to be, has it dropped off or has it been completed or?
Mr. Porch? Thank you.
Completed at the end of last financial year. So
Thank
it's
you,
not
Mr.
in this
Wood.
year's program.
Right, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, any other questions?
No, that was it.
Thank you. Yes, councillor Simons.
Yeah, I'm not sure the first one's quite relevant to this, but it goes back to for our planning authority. I noticed we haven't had many planning applications come before us as a planning authority. Are our planning application down?
General Manager?
I think through you, Mr. Mayor, Council, I don't think there's necessarily been a significant change in the last. We're still dealing. The last time I looked on the board outside in the foyer, which is all our current DAs, there are about 12 or 13 there, which is a fair. That's the DAs we're dealing with currently. They fluctuate. I've seen as many as 20 up there. I don't think there may be wider economic factors at play in terms of impacting on our development and what people are prepared to do at this stage. But I wouldn't say there's been a significant decrease, no.
Any other questions relating to the financial report? Oh, yes, councillor Simons again.
Yeah, I've just got one other question, and it's through you to the general manager, and it may have to be taken on notice. I've just got a question about our external project management costs, and I'm wondering what those costs have been to date for our grant monies that we're bringing in, and we're having those projects managed. What have we paid in project management fees?
I imagine that requires some precision, that answer, General Manager. Perhaps you may want to confer and write to councillor Simons to give a specific response.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can respond not with the individual figures for each project, but I think it's important to note that as council would be aware, we've got some fairly significant projects happening around the municipality. Some of them have been are way behind the original plan or intent was for completion. A few of them in Bicheno that councillor Simons would be well aware of. So the question around what is the project management or the professional advice costs associated with those is a very valid and important one, because those costs can creep up on you the longer a project is delayed. Community consultation always which has to be done, and particularly with some of the Bicheno projects, there was significant community consultation. All that has an impact, if you like, on the overall budget or funding available. I've had regular discussions with Mr. Porch about how we're tracking with those. I don't know if he wants to make any comment, but I'm comfortable that we are within reason for it at a point in time when the project's complete and we've got to report it. We've got to report what the actual costs were. So what was our design cost? What was our community consultation cost? What was our actual construction cost? At a point in time, we have to do that. But I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Mr. Porch, but I believe that we are tracking as well as we can be, given the delays with projects. We've had contractor delays. We've had, as you're aware, the whole contract industry is under a significant period. So we are months behind what we should have been. And with each passing month, there is an increment of the cost that you're referring to. Do you want to make any further comment?
Only that, yeah, look, we'll provide the figures.
Oh, well, I should have said that.
Councillor Churchill, you had a question to ask? Councillor Browning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Another question through you, Mayor, to maybe Mr. Porch. I notice in the same page, capital works deal, the major financial numbers that you see in the list of total budget 22-23, the major figures, 870,000 is the Swansea Main Street paving, 315 is out of, not necessarily under that same sort of umbrella that I'm going to be talking about or asking about. The 1.3 million for the Bicheno Gulch, etc. Is there a feeling that, I got from the last reply that there are issues that we are beyond our control, really, but is there a feeling that the federal government who provide those grants are on the same page as us when they look at whether or not they're willing to extend the period that, or grant period or whatever, that we're obliged to follow?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can answer that. The grant periods, we do request for extensions and we get granted extensions to complete projects for various reasons. They get delayed, and that's recognised by the external funding agency as we get support to do that. But of course, with that comes increased costs, and I think that's the issue that council needs to be mindful of. That coupled with the fact that as time goes on, costs can increase, materials costs can increase. And a good example was the Swansea Main Street project, where we went to the market with a budget and a grant, and the market came back at double what we had for the project. So that required a revisit and a change to the scope of works, etc., etc. Now, that could well happen with the other projects you've just mentioned. We're only about to go out to tender with the Bicheno Triangle. Is it this month, Peter? Shortly. So, we're going to have to wait and see, but you're right. The circumstances are out of our control and they're not unique to Glamorgan Spring Bay.
Just to reiterate, the issue of the Swansea Main Street scope was when it was proposed to us, to this council initially and agreed to, etc., and signed off on for the grant money. The proposal included for paving, and that was the whole issue, was providing a footpath basically and a streetscape paving up the main street. It was supposed to be, and costed at that stage, with interlocking block paving, which was then going to be able to be manipulated to provide in-street artwork in the footpath, similar to you might find in other places where they use, for example, in Campbelltown, they use bricks with names on them. That was agreed to by the local DAFT group. And now, because of those cost increases, interlocking paving is totally out of the question for the amount of work that needs to be done, even if the workload is being reduced or the extent of the work is being reduced. And we're back to awful old grey concrete, which was not the original concept in the first place. People have commented on the fact that they thought they were getting a silver line straight main street, and they're getting a real, basically a concrete one. That sort of disappointment we need to be aware of to the community, to make sure that we let them know that the reason for that change is not because somebody decided to just, or nobody's made a mistake. It's the fact that that's the way things are these days with economics. And I think it might be worthwhile for us to start thinking about, if that is the case with financial situations these days, we might look to, instead of changing the tone of the work that's done and covering the area that's supposed to be covered, we look at reducing the coverage and increasing the tone so that we get quality for what we spend our money on, rather than extent of work, which can be some other form other than something that's really nice for the community. The condition of the footpath up part of Swansea is pretty average, to say the least. The fact that the looks of it, I mean the fact that it's a safer footpath is great. And there's going to be some work on reducing curbing that was tripping people up. And by the way, cost council hundreds of thousands of dollars in a lawsuit many years ago. That's being removed and replaced with proper curbing and proper footpath, which is a great idea. But instead of looking to have the extent of the work covered, I think the quality of the work ought to be something that's in the councillors' minds in future when we look at approving projects like this with funding.
So councillor Brenny, that's a suggestion made to the general manager and director of works, is that right?
An observation and a suggestion. Thank you.
Well,
I know they understand that now very well. I don't have to tell them how to suck eggs, but it is something that the community has passed on to me, that they're very disappointed with the fact that they thought they were going to get, block paving and artwork, and they're now just getting concrete.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a comment, I'll make it Mr. Porch to verify this, but I thought, well, there's two things. One is your comment about instead of trying to extend the works over the original length, trying to do a smaller portion to a high quality job. Absolutely agree. And we've had those exact discussions. That's what we've endeavored to do with this job. Even if it got to ended up only doing half of the length that we intended, but doing it well, because you can always add on to that at a later stage and keep the quality high. Totally agree. And we've tried to do that. I stand corrected though, but when we did our community consultation, and I remember one session in the main street of Swansea, we had the plans rolled out and there was quite a good turnout. I think it was may have been over a weekend, I don't know, but there was quite a good turnout. And we had the plans and we had the details of what was going to be constructed. Mr. Porch, was that at that point where we're talking about concrete paving?
At that point, we certainly had identified on the plans what the proposed surfaces were going to be.
Right, yeah. And we had positive feedback on those forums and what was shown on the plans, from what I can recall.
thank you, General Manager, and thank you, councillor Brenny. Are there any other questions or suggestions?
And sorry, just another.
Yes,
sorry,
the
through
General
you, Mr.
Manager,
Mayor.
please.
And the pathway, the footpath north of the town, on the northern end of Swansea, is a nightmare from an engineering perspective, as you would appreciate.
Absolutely,
You've got driveway entrances there. You've got a slope. You've got it above the ground. So to achieve any sort of safety improvements, and that certainly has been done now, but not, and reduce risk, but still have something that looks really nice, was a big challenge. Because of the nature of the environment.
Thank you.
Further
General.
down on the flat, it's going to be a lot easier.
Thank you, General Manager. If there are no other comments or questions, I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Item 6, section 24 committees, there are no reports. Item 7, information reports. The Director of Works from Mr. Porch, the detailed report, and a very good one too, with photographs. And many of the problems that the weather has produced have been shown. I ask for a motion.
Yep.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'll move that council notes the information.
Seconded. Councillor Arnold. Any discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like it's probably a little bit of a silly question, but on page 23, under works request categories last 12 months, and it's got dog park 2. What were the requests in the dog parks?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's
Please, Mr. Porch.
an extremely good question. I don't have intimate knowledge about all of the requests we've got through the year, and I haven't looked into that one particularly to find out what the issue was there. I can do so if you require.
No, not really. I just was wondering, well, yeah, if you can find out, that'd be great, since I asked the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Porch. Any, yes, councillor Arnold.
I don't actually have a question, Mayor, but what I do have is, what I would like to do is acknowledge the outside work staff, particularly Darren Smith and his team, who assisted the state emergency or our emergency services SES people here with the Remembrance Day road closure. They gave up their Sunday morning to help with our service, and as a member of that committee and a member of the community, I sincerely thank the staff for that.
Thank you very much, councillor Arnold. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, look, once again, through you, Mayor, no, not a question, but just a couple of points I'd like to make. Concurring with what councillor Arnold has said, I was actually up at Bishno at Harpy's Farm Road, and one of Darren's team leaders from Swansea, Michael, I think was doing a terrific job with his part of the team, clearing the drains there. But what I was most impressed with was the way he was dealing with some of the public who were coming up to him, asking him questions and, you know, saying, what are the council doing here? And he was really calm and he dealt with it really, really well. And I passed that on to Greg and Peter. And also in relation to the first couple of paragraphs under general there on page, must be 24, about the landslip at on Redmond Road at Spring Beach. 2 points. I was very pleased, I know the community were, with the way Greg Ingham and the general manager, I should say, and our director Peter Porch came out immediately to assess the situation with the team, and the plastic barriers, as I said, were put in place. I guess there are lots of these situations around the municipality at the moment. I mean, this is looking at being $100,000 to replace, but I was down there looking at it yesterday, and I just wanted to point out that some more of the embankment, just a small bit, has eroded and has slid down the bank. So it's not getting better, but I can see with the rain that's coming tonight and tomorrow, we could be in for some more problems there. So I just wanted to point that out, Peter.
Thank you very much, councillor Robinson. Councillor Churchill.
I just wanted to compliment Mr. Porch and his staff on managing everything that's been happening lately. I mean, all of this extreme rainfall events, and we know they're going to keep going. How you're keeping on top of it, I do not know. And even in the emergency management committee minutes, there was a mention there about the council's proactive approach to checking drainage, etc., prior to predicted weather events is working well. Well, you know, if you can predict the damage that's going to be done, and you clearly must be to some effect, it's great that the community are noticing this, and I'm sure we all appreciate very much how hard that work is. I can imagine the hours that you're working, because I reckon you'd be up at daylight and not going away until dark on some of these days. But thank you, and thank you staff as well, please.
Councillor Churchill, thank you very much. We're very lucky at this council. We've got very competent directors and staff. They do more than I would have thought most council staff members and directors would actually normally do. And thank you all very much. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Now, the next item is item 8, officers' report requiring a decision, road asset take-up. The details are in the agenda. Is there a motion? Councillor Robinson.
The council accepts the report and notes the information.
Is there a second? Councillor Simons. Councillor Robinson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, only through you, Mayor, only that it was a very interesting report, I thought, on how roads are considered either council's responsibility or otherwise. I thought it was I had to read it a couple of times, but it's very well explained.
Yeah, I'd agree with councillor Robertson there. Perhaps just one thing to note: when we do accept ownership of roads through subdivisions and what have you, we do need to be mindful that we do collect the rates year on year on year on year. So we've been giving at times quite valuable assets that we then get paid for. So it's important to remember that.
Thank you very much. bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Now, yes, Deputy Mayor Woods.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to concur with both Councillor Robinson and Councillor Simons and thank Mr. Porch for the extensive report. Note in the officer's comments, the second and third paragraph are pretty much how it is. So, but it doesn't hurt to ask and it doesn't hurt to look at these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to make any comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment, a
Yes,
general
please,
comment
General
again
Manager.
on roads? And I certainly don't want to put Mr. Porch in it in this regard, but we,
Sounds as if
I
you
know-
might be going
no,
to be
no,
put in it.
no,
General
I
Manager,
know
doesn't it?
I know you've heard it ad nauseum, but our road network, our sealed road network in particular, our bitumen road network is under extreme pressure at the moment. No different to anyone else, but I guess the ongoing rain and obviously the traffic, so the traffic on the road, you would have seen, I'm sure all of you, road failures all over the place. We have to, this is going to be a major focus of council going forward to deal with the backlog of road repairs and road rehabilitation that we have in front of us right now. That's without further rain events and further. So I guess I just want to highlight to you that it's $110 million asset that we look after. By the way, it's gone up a bit with the revalue, $115 million road asset. That is our responsibility. When we come to budgeting next year, when we start our budget process early next year, we have a duty to put up to council what we're dealing with and what council is going to need to fund, just to try and keep on top of our road repairs.
In other words, General Manager, our maintenance costs might take a leap into the air. Is that correct?
Well, costs generally have gone up
I understand that.
outside of our control, but I guess I'm just talking, Mr. Mayor, about the impact of the weather, the weather events, and everyone, all road asset managers are facing the same situation. We're not unique. Some of our roads, I have to say, have not been well built. And obviously in the past, and obviously those roads tend to fail earlier than you would like. Ideally, a good sealed road, well built, irrespective of weather, really should last 30 years. But that's not the reality. So,
Thank you, General
yeah.
Manager. Anyone else? What about, oh, yes, Councillor Churchill.
Make a further comment on that. On the radio yesterday, there was comments from the Mayor of Southern Midlands, exactly along those lines. They're dealing with exactly the same processes and describing how they're going to have to take funding in their next budget from new projects and take it to maintenance and renewal. So, we're not on our own, and he was pointing out to what a major problem it is for them.
Thank you. There's Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we're all going to hear from the Federal Treasurer about funding. And part of what was raised here earlier was the funding for infrastructure works by the federal government on places like Tasman Highway. Anybody who looks at the condition of parts of Tasman Highway through our municipality will be well aware of the issues faced by anybody with a bitumen or sealed road. Some parts of it are, and I say this with full knowledge of the implications of it, some parts of the Tasman Highway are dangerous because of the condition of the road. It's deteriorated to an extent where the funding that's been promised by the federal government is probably going to solve some of the issues, but certainly nowhere near the amount that it should. That sort of issue that the federal treasurer is dealing with is the issue to a lesser extent that the people who deal with our finances here in this municipality have to deal with as well. The increased costs, the amount of work that's being done. It's a spiraling thing, and hopefully the community will be made aware of just the difficulties that are involved in that sort of thing.
Councillor Brennan, are you saying we should watch out when we drive along Paradise or up Cherry Tree Hill or Rocky Hills?
Anybody who would like to see a classic example of the issue in relation to the condition of our roads that are looked after by state growth and want to compare the condition of a road in Tasmania, or that secondary highway, it's Highway 1, I think, needs to just simply drive between Devil's Corner for another 4 kilometres north around Absalom. There were repairs carried out there some 3 months ago, and they are completely ruined again. That's how things happen around, our road system. The fact that we have road systems in our municipality that are handled by council, seemingly a lot better, can only stand because of the diligence of people like our staff. Thank you.
So small is beautiful, perhaps. Councillor Robinson.
Just through you, Mayor, just really briefly highlighting a point that our General Manager brought up. I noticed in one of the reports today that the cost of 1 square metre of ceiling has almost doubled in the last 12 months. So that's another, sort of sting to us, really. I mean, we've got the layout of what we'd like to do with our roads, but I think we'll find out that we certainly can't do it all because of that increase in costs.
Thank you. All those in favour of the motion, please raise their hand. Against, I'll declare the motion carried unanimously. Next item, 8.2, Marine Infrastructure Committee. Do I have a motion? Yes, Councillor Simons.
I'd like to put the motion that council delay the disbanding of the Section 24 Marine Infrastructure Committee until such time that council can undertake further investigation into a governance mechanism that allows input and engagement from users of Glamorgan Spring Bay marine infrastructure.
Is there a seconder? Yes, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Simons, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a little bit hasty to disband this committee, and I just think it needs a little bit more thought in my mind. I think if we leave the committee in place, there's no risk to council. I think to unwind the committee, we're probably leaving council at risk to some extent reputationally. Marine and infrastructure is a pretty important part of our municipality, and people, recreational, professional people, use these assets daily, and they have a very good understanding of what's required in a practical sense of how these assets should operate. There's a network out there in the boating world. They talk to one another, and it's important that the information they have actually finds its way back to council, and in collaboration with MAS, that we can act upon it. I think that a committee situation can provide that conduit. I think it's an identifiable link that users can bring to council and bring that information to us. So I think perhaps this committee has lacked some administrative support from council to a certain extent, and I think it's stymied their momentum a little bit. I don't think there's any harm in cutting back the requirements and simplifying the procedure of this committee. And by that, I mean simple things like Zoom meetings, I mean agenda preparation, minute taking, administrative housekeeping that council can provide to make it easy for volunteers and people that might sit on that committee or might want to sit on that committee, to facilitate them to want to do that. I certainly don't doubt the officer's comments that the day-to-day operational processes are adequately managed. But I just don't believe it's in the user's best interest to centralise all the decision-making into council administration. Just for me, it lacks the engagement required for the best results.
Anyone else wish to comment before I ask the seconder to comment?
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. I originally wrote my statement about this matter to vote against the recommendation, but it is very relevant to Councillor Simons's motion. So One of the guiding principles of council is to draw on the knowledge and expertise of local people and communities in shaping and delivering our initiatives and plans, listening to and taking account of ideas and feedback from residents, businesses and ratepayers. It is my view that the process to disband the Marine Infrastructure Committee has been flawed under the review of Section 24 committees. It's come to my attention that meetings that were scheduled were cancelled by officers because of lack of resources, rather than the committee deciding not to meet. Further, I question how much support there really is for the action. I understand that there were some committee members who expressed reservation about the decision and how future community input on marine infrastructure would be achieved, but that is not in this report. We are told that a majority of committee members support the recommendation. The statement in the report, the lapse of meetings in recent times, reflects the minimal role the committee now plays. Begs the question, is this actually accurate if it is staff who have cancelled meetings? I think we need to recognise that the last 2 years have been particularly difficult for Section 24 committees in general, with COVID impacting on their ability to meet. I think it's poor form on the part of this council to treat a long-standing Section 24 committee in such a manner and seek their approval of disbandment by email. Why couldn't this review process have required the committee to meet and make a recommendation to council about their future? If this committee is disbanded, then I fail to see how the guiding principle I mentioned at the start will be adhered to. To send an email to seek the committee's input shows a level of disrespect for the committee members' views that beggars belief and hardly meets the expectations of how a review of a Section 24 committee should be done. I will support Councillor Simons's motion.
Is there anyone against the motion? Yes, Councillor Judge.
Yeah, if I just ask a question for starters, if I'd just like to know when the last one of these meetings was actually held.
March 2021.
That seems to me like a long time ago. So there's a conflict here in what I'm being told and what's in the report. In the report we have here in front of us, it says committee members have been asked about their view of the need for the committee into the future, and the majority agree that disbanding the committee would not be detrimental. So it just seems to be, to me, a great contrast in the information that I'm hearing. Now, who's correct and who's not, I won't be the judge of that. But if it hasn't met for that long a period, I would take the view that it would at least need refreshing at a very minimum. So if it is terminated now, there's no reason that it couldn't again be established in the very near future, perhaps in the period of the next council, which seemed to me to be a logical thing if there was an impetus for that next council to do that. But I just don't quite get the logic behind the facts that I'm being given. Why you would have this thing there stagnant for that period of time and then want to defend or be against a decision to formalise its removal. I'll put a foreshadowing motion if the motion is lost, and the foreshadowing motion would be the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Councillor Browning. I'm sorry, Councillor Robinson. I was looking at Annie.
Through you, Mayor, I've been torn on this issue, and I've been a council rep on this committee, and it is true that we haven't met. The committee has not met since March last year. But I've had 2 or 3 representations from members of the committee recently, and with their concerns about the termination of committee. The last committee meeting I attended, the chair actually asked the committee whether, he said, do you think we should continue as a group? And I think it was, vast majority said, yes, I think we should continue. But since then, as it's been pointed out, we haven't had a meeting. So it's one of those ones that I haven't quite made my mind up on yet, because I can see the value of a committee, as Councillor Simon says, but we haven't had meetings. So, and whether those meetings are as a result of what Councillor Arnold's saying, or is it because they just haven't been organised. I'm not sure. So I'm a bit torn on this one.
Any other discussion? Councillor Browning.
Through you, Mayor, the thing about Zoom meetings is, because that way people around the municipality could have an input, not just, I'm assuming that most of the people that are on this committee are from Tribunna or Orford.
Swansea.
Okay, so, right, the Zoom meeting could, work, but yeah, it hasn't functioned as a committee for 18 months. So how are you going to my thing is, what's the solution of revitalising it?
Councillor Browning. Thank you, Councillor Browning.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a member of the committee, as Councillor has mentioned, I disagree with Councillor Arnold's assessment of why things happen the way they have. Not that they have happened, of course they have, but I don't agree that there has been a move by staff to eliminate the committee. I think the committee, when we were sitting, were looking more to why are we here? I would say that the gross amount of work that we did was to decide on whether or not there was a requirement to increase or decrease rates at the marina, because the rest of the duties of the infrastructure committee were based around contact with, for example, the rescue group in Swansea, which simply related to whether or not council could deal with renewing and funding things like renewing of life jackets and whatever, disposal of flares. And the only other issue I think that would be raised at a committee level would be the provision of infrastructure or upgrading of infrastructure in marine infrastructure areas such as the Bicheno Jetty, etc., Coles Bay, etc., and the notorious Swansea boat ramp. But all of those things, that infrastructure, is mainly initiated by not by boat owners, but by MAST, who then advise council, who then take up whether or not that's a requirement. Now, whether or not that committee, who is represented by MAST, is a representative on it, whether that committee is the one who decides on whether or not infrastructure does happen or doesn't, and how it occurs, or what feedback you get. The feedback in relation to marine infrastructure, I believe, from my experience with the committee, was that it wasn't people talking to council, it was people talking to MAST. And MAST definitely are the people who are there on site all the time, and they are the ones who every boat owner knows about because they pay their licenses, etc. It seems to me that we need, I'm inclined to agree with councillors on this issue of maybe it's premature to disband it per se. But I do think one thing needs to be outlined very clearly, and that is a memorandum of understanding or whatever, a group of rules as to exactly why we're there. Because if you don't have that, we sat around, it's exactly what happened. We sat around and weren't really sure of what our responsibilities were, other than to simply pass on requirements to the management as to what MAST wanted, what we felt, because we had no control over it, what we felt about fees at the marina. And by the way, the marina took up, I guarantee, 80% of all discussion in relation to any of the infrastructure in this municipality. There might have been a bit of comment with regards to major projects, such as when the Swansea boat ramp was being built, but generally the people in the Marine Infrastructure Committee some of the people who were on it seem to think that it was just in relation to the Tribunna Wharf. Now, how to resolve that issue, I think an S24 committee that didn't sit for nearly 2 years or a year and a half, that was sort of considered to be normal by the members, because we didn't really have a set of goals to be adhering to or to be aspiring to. So if we're going to put this off and delay the disbanding, yeah, that might be an issue. But before we do anything, I think we ought to have a memorandum of understanding or a list of what you're required to do, what the committee is there for, so that those who are deciding on whether or not we should have the committee can have a look at that and see whether or not that's the sort of duties of an S24 committee.
Thank you, councillor Bruni. Councillor Arnold, please have another go.
Yes, if I could just respond to councillor Bruni, please. It's not necessarily about the fact that the Marine Infrastructure Committee is to be disbanded. For me, what it's about is the process that's been undertaken in terms of this council made a decision that we would review Section 24 committees. Now, to me, that would be someone, an officer or council or someone sitting down with the particular committee and working through all the issues that councillor Bruni identified, and allow that committee to then put their concerns. The fact they haven't met for 2 years is irrelevant. It's about the process of the review of a Section 24 committee for me. And I just do not believe that sending the committee members an email asking, do you agree with the disbandment, to be appropriate consultation in the review
Councillor
of a
Arnold,
long-standing Section 24
I'm
committee.
going to ask you to halt. You're repeating what you said earlier on, and there is no point to me in getting into, you said this, no, I didn't, I said that. It's very easy for a breakdown in communication to lead to apparent different beliefs in what happened. Just remember the First World War when they wanted to get reinforcements.
I don't need a lecture, thank you.
Well, it's very easy for these sorts of things to be misinterpreted, and criticising one officer or councillor or another doesn't aid the matter. Deputy Mayor Woods.
Criticising.
Thank you, Mayor. As a seconder, I'd like to just say that the last meeting that the Marine Infrastructure Committee had was on May 4th, 2020, because I have the meeting minutes here. Now, in that meeting, there were discussions on Saltwork Boat Ramp, Tribunna Wharf and Marina, Bishno Gulch, parking update, Swan River Boat Ramp, fee structure review of the Tribunna Marina and Wharf Precinct policy, Maritime Museum proposal to local display in Marina Precinct, and then a roundtable discussion, which the meeting went for 2.5 hours. There has been said today that they haven't met for 2 years. Let's not forget we've had to deal with a lot, not only with COVID, but a fair bit this council. And COVID has certainly made a big impact, and the availability of people to be able to attend meetings is pretty much slashed. I've been speaking to a lot of the members on this committee, and they, if it's so deemed that council disbands it, so be it. But they're not, quite a few of them are not, don't want it disbanded just yet, because there's still a lot to do in their opinion. And I can think of one thing, and I know that it sounds parochial, but there's one big ticket item that I think that this committee can do, and that is tart up the other side of the marina in Tribunna. You know, there's people there that are paying berth fees for nothing. They have no toilet. They have the infrastructure around there is not ideal. And I know that there has been an issue there, but that's not to be discussed here. That sort of thing is what this committee does. That sort of thing. It's not just here. It's Salt River. What do I call it?
Saltwater.
So Swan River and all of those sorts of places. And the fee structure review, that's an important thing that this committee does, as do other committees. When we're discussing our fees, they are the ones that are talking to the people down at the marina, or talking, well, only at the marina really, because they're the ones that can sense what's going on down there. This year, they got slapped with a 15%, another 15% increase in their fees with no consultation at all. The people that have come to me and spoken to me with regards to the fee infrastructure, the fee hike, the 15%, had no information whatsoever about it. And to say that they're a little bit peeved is an understatement, but that's a story for another day. But I think it's very premature to disband this committee at this moment. It's not costing council anything, really, other than maybe some hours with regards to secretarial support. And I think it's a valuable committee that needs to be looked at, and I support Councillor Simon's motion.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion apart from Councillor Churchill? Would you like to say something?
A couple of quick comments.
Please.
Um,
Other people had two
Firstly,
goes, you have
if
another two.
we're talking about process here, which Councillor Arnold was, the Section 24 committees all have a terms of reference. That terms of reference says meeting 4 times a year. Perhaps once or twice then would be reasonable. So that hasn't happened. That would be the first point I make. 2 years ago, I know that the committee did meet about the fees. I think I'm correct in that. And 2 years ago, the committee put the fees up 15%. So I can't see why the drama, if they've been excluded from it this time, when they have the opportunity or have had the opportunity to meet up to 4 times a year within the terms of reference. And I guess these are things, to me, this is not a big deal whether it stays or it goes, but I think it reflects back on the fact that we need some serious analysis of all of our Section 24 committees and get them either functioning or get them gone. I think that is a fair position to take.
Councillor Simon, your response, please.
Oh, yeah, be closing them on?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll take my opportunity to close the debate.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's fine. So I think we've got a little off track here with the intent of my motion, which is, I would like to read it again, but it's actually not up there. A couple of things just to counter a little bit. I think part of the reason of no meeting, as I said in my initial statement, there probably hasn't been enough support from council. This needs to be driven a little bit by council, and it needs to be driven by administration, who put forward the agendas, who put forward the meeting dates, who organise the technology that goes with it. That's pretty simple to reinvigorate the committee. Just so they're not the ones that are having to ring one another up and say, look, should we have a meeting? Well, we will, won't we? No, we won't. Obviously, COVID's played a big part in this, because that really, threw the skids under everything for 2 years. I think, as I said, there's no harm or risk to council to revisit this. But I think once you unpick it and unwind it, it is very difficult to put it back together again. And I think if we just let it sit, let the next council come in, have a workshop, debate it, and decide exactly what Councillor Churchill said. It's quite relevant that we look at the Section 24 committees and see where they are. But I do think a lot of this is an important committee, and I just think it needs some more support, more administrative support from council. But until we get to that point, we'll have to decide.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. I read the motion that council delay the disbanding of the Section 24 Infrastructure Committee until such time that council can undertake further investigation into a governance mechanism that allows all input, that allows input and engagement from the users of Glamorgan Spring Bay marine infrastructure. That's the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hands.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, we just need to clarify. Users, governance, are we saying the users of Glamorgan Spring Bay marine infrastructure
Yes.
or just a committee? A committee or a governance structure?
Yeah, look, I think it can be either or really. I think we just got to have the discussion. But at the moment, we delay the disbanding of the Section 24 committee. And if it's another mechanism we have to use that we think is a better mechanism, that's fine. And if it's not, we stick with the 24 committee.
Terms of reference.
And if I can just identify, I think the word should be governance, not
Governance, yeah.
government. Governance.
Investigation into a governance mechanism. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillor Simons. And the next item on the agenda is item 8.3, Orford offshore master plan. Foreshore master plan.
It's almost
Councillor
offshore.
Arnold.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move that Council 1 endorse the Orford Foreshore Master Plan in the form of attachment 1. 2, does not agree to enter into a lease/license for the Prosser River training wall in brackets sandbags, nor accept responsibility for any maintenance or management of this infrastructure. And 3, review the outcomes and timeframes on a regular basis with the aim to have implementation of the management plan finalised within 5 years. Miss Hazelwood does have the motion.
Oh, councillor Brennan. Do we have a typed copy of that motion? Or-
Miss Hazelwood has it now
Oh,
on the
thank-
screen.
That's very effective.
On the
Thank you very
screen.
much.
Thank you. So if I may, Mayor, I'll
Yes, please
speak to the motion. There has been many hours invested in achieving this plan by many people who value the area for its environmental and cultural history. The report has identified that it's not an easy or quick fix. It will require significant planning and funding by all stakeholders, but it does appear that there is light at the end of a very long tunnel in relation to this particular area. However, in the context of the IBA, the timeframes are, in my view, too long. Implementation of the plan within 10 years is not ambitious enough if we are to have any hope of saving the threatened species in that area. One outcome that is noted on page 37 of the report to council, that is page 24 of the plan, states that some changes were made to the report following consultation. One in particular deals with adding text to confirm that there will be ongoing management action at the IBA until the resources are identified to allow for the preparation of the proposed management plan. It is a desirable outcome, but there does not appear to be text in this context actually added into the plan. At least I couldn't find it. It appears also that the acknowledgement of a written submission from the Friends of Orford Bird Sanctuary was omitted in the final draft. I note that advice has been received that their submission was considered in the assessment process, and that it should be acknowledged in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone against the motion?
No.
Anyone for the motion? Here's Councillor Churchill.
Just either for or against. I actually like the motion. I think it's good. The idea of having to complete it in 5 years may be a practical impossibility. A great aspiration, may be a practical impossibility because there's a large amount of infrastructure that's actually got to be constructed there, which means grant funding and a whole lot of things. So I think we're probably a bit ambitious, but I'm happy to go with that ambition to get it done in 5 years. I think the important issues there that really will save the birds, and that's a major concern of mine, which everyone in this room knows, will probably be completed pretty much short of that period of time. I know I've questioned the first part of the medium term, which I felt should have been pulled forward into the short term, which is 2 years. And it was pointed out to me by the director that that was a recommendation of Parks, but that their ambition was to actually do it in the short term, even though they listed it in the medium term. So I think this is a really, really good plan, and I'm quite happy with the motion, and I would really love to see it all done in 5 years.
Any other comments?
If I could just close the, oh, sorry, Councillor Brennan.
As,
Councillor Brady.
thank you, as seconder. Yes, I think this is a far better motion. It covers some of the, well, at least one of the major issues I had, and that was council liability in relation to the sandbags. I think the important word in item 3 being aim, with an aim to finalise within 5 years is a good one, because it leaves it open. We can discuss that in, or councils can discuss that in future. I won't be involved, thank goodness. But one thing I have to say is that after 3 long years and 2 committees and 2 plans that have been put forward, and so much community angst and sometimes aggression, it's really pleasing to see this plan finally come to fruition, and hopefully it will resolve the primary issue that was raised by Councillor Churchill and protection of the birds, which is why this all started. The overall plan itself, there are issues in there that the local community seem to have come to terms with, which is great. I didn't necessarily agree with all of them, but I'm really happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Summers?
I think Councillor Breeny pretty much said what I was about to say, so I'm happy to leave it at that.
I'd like to make one comment about the foreshore master plan. It's an attractive master plan. It's caused me some agony because we decide that we won't accept management responsibility for what happens on the site. It has no legal effect, and I'm concerned that if we take over a lease or license of the unallocated Crown land, we will take over an obligation to maintain access and to probably prevent access to the area, especially from people that use and children that use the Radar Beach area. And to me, I'm concerned that it's a positive danger constructed not by us, but by others, and by taking over the area by means of a lease, license or freehold, we will saddle ourselves with the responsibility that might flow from people swimming from the North Shore where they're not meant to, in an endeavour to get to the enticement of the raft area in the Prosser River. And I'm very concerned it's such a danger that someone will be very seriously injured. And I can't support the motion for that reason alone. Anyway, I now put, I'm sorry, Councillor.
If I could just
Yes.
close the debate, thank you. The wording with the aim to have implementation is there for a very specific reason. I recognise that within 5 years is probably ambitious on my part. because of the funding and that will be needed to achieve this plan. I only put review the outcome and timeframes on a regular basis there because I just simply did not want this to be another plan, another report that sits on a shelf and is not reviewed on a regular basis to achieve the outcomes that we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Will I put the motion? All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the motion carried, with the mayor being the only dissenter. Item 8.4, mulching green waste.
I'll move the motion.
Yes. Deputy Mayor Wood's motion.
I'll move that council advise the public that a coarse mulch is available to pick up in domestic quantities from the Orford transfer station at the property owner's risk and from time to time at no cost.
And Councillor Woods, when you say property owners, could you be a little more precise, please?
Well, the people who take, it's in the body of the report about property owners taking the mulch at their own risk. So the
You
people-
mean the collector's
Yes,
risk? So
Yeah.
it'd be at the risk of the collector. Would that not be a little more?
I would
explicit?
say, yes, we can use that word.
At the risk of the collector.
Yeah.
Because it's not quite clear what property owners mean to me.
Yep. If we could change that then.
At the
Collector's risk.
collector's risk. Is there a second for the motion? Councillor Robinson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and probably to Mr. Porch, I think just a couple of things to clarify. I'm sorry, and it's probably quite simply answered and easily explained, but excuse me ignorance. In the page 37 on paragraph 5, I think we talk about there's a horror of this machine includes a base fee for a volume of material that is at least 4 times the maximum volume we collect before burning. So are we saying that the base fee for that machine is you need 4 times as much as what we normally have sitting there before we burn it?
Mr. Porch?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a maximum volume of material we collect and burn through the EPA license.
Yep.
So the volume that we would need to collect to get maximum value from that machine is at least 4 times what we would normally collect. Now that's for Orford. None of our transfer stations have a lot of room. And of course, the more mulch we collect, the more fire risk.
Yeah. And do we not have the room to store that amount, the 4 times amount at each of the stations?
We need to be able to spread it to provide division between mulch piles if we're going to do that.
Yep.
And that again, because of the largely undeveloped nature of our transfer stations, we don't have large areas of hard stand that we can do that effectively on. So there are some limitations. It's likely that we will be looking to extend the areas where we can to get greater capacity, but at the moment we don't have that greater capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Porch.
Thanks. And then just to clarify, is the cost of chipping, which it sounds like chipping's our first choice of preference, is the cost to do that $100,000 as in Bicheno and Swansea are 100? I didn't quite understand the amount. Is it 100,000 to chip that waste throughout the municipality, or is it more?
So for the mulching, the cost is around about $100,000. If we were to chip, it would be closer to $150,000. And that would be the chipping. The chipping is more difficult to achieve, not just from a cost perspective, but from a space and for the other and timing. As I've indicated in there, there's no current resource available, with Fieldworks getting a second machine into the state. That increases the capacity, but I don't know what additional demand has been there for them to decide they need a second one, and whether in fact that demand will be fully met. Second machine.
And so just further, so that, as I say, the chipping is our preferred option, because then we haven't got the fire risk, and it's a better product to be able to sell or move or give away, I suppose. Is that?
Fine, it's not a reduced fire risk. There's still the same fire risk associated with it when we chip it in that smaller. It's a more, all of it, as is the case at the moment, we've got maybe 10 to 20% or something there. It's these larger clumps, which you might burn in a fire. That's probably about the only value they have. You wouldn't put them on your garden,
Right.
I doubt. But the chipping, the chippers chip the whole lot down to a consistent size.
Yep.
So and that would give us greater opportunity as well for alternatives. We did do the trial earlier on with fermentation, and the fermentation requires that smaller and consistent size as well.
Mhm.
So the smaller chipping, the higher price would give us alternatives for a better, a saleable mulch, which other councils are currently doing. So councils who are currently using that chipping do so with a view to providing a product, in a sense, back to the market to help reduce the cost of the activity itself. Doesn't pay for itself, but it reduces the cost.
Reduces it. And would that be a product council would use itself on its own, in its own works department?
Council would use some of that. We certainly wouldn't use anywhere near the full volume of it, but yes, we would. Similarly, we will use some of this mulch that's produced in preference to purchasing it in, look after costs. But again, there's less of it that we can use.
Yeah.
And it's not quite as attractive on the garden.
Yeah, understand. And is it reasonable to say then that if you went down the chipping road, if you look at the fees we collect for green waste, we've got a shortfall of $120,000 thereabouts?
If we were to chip and it cost $150,000, then yes, all the income is expected to be at the current fees around about $30,000 from all transfer stations.
Yeah. And is there any machine available to council that's not hired? That's obviously a smaller capacity machine, but that's something we could afford to buy ourselves, or is that not even a remote possibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, look, there are machines available on the market, smaller chippers, but the difficulty with, well, the problem with them is that they require hand feeding, smaller machines. And so you've got labour there with both the larger chipper and with this shredder. They're fed with a large hopper and belt driven, puts with an excavator with a grab.
Yeah.
So the process is quite fast comparatively. For the fermentation trial we did, we looked at, again, we were looking around, we hadn't come across the shredder at that stage, and again, the size of it doesn't lend itself to fermentation. But we sourced a machine, large-ish machine, but not to this size, and created chips as a result of that, and we got very little for a long time.
Right.
It's a very costly exercise to hand feed and to try and get your chips out of that. So it's not, we haven't done the numbers, but you look at it, it's just not going to be cost effective.
Thank you.
And that's borne out by the fact no other council is doing that.
Very good.
Any other query? Oh, yes, councillor Brownlie.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Porsche. Is it possible to try and re-chip the larger chunks, or is it cost ineffective?
Mr. Mayor, we would need a chipper to start with. So we don't have a chipper that we can do that with. So we'd have to hire in another process and feed those in. I'm not sure that feeding those short bits in would necessarily be particularly safe. There would be some challenges with it. It's something we can continue to investigate. If we're going to continue with this process, then it's something we can investigate and see whether we can improve on that. But that's the best that comes out of the machine as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Through you, Mayor, just a comment. It's really good to see that given we've been discussing this for a couple of years now, and we've been on notice to improve our management of green waste, that we've actually got a proposal up and an initial solution. And I think that's a really excellent initial outcome.
Councillor. Any other questions? Yes, councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Mayor. I did actually read this agenda item with a lot of interest because I've had some complaints from ratepayers around what it's costing to take green waste to our waste transfer stations. So, and I was also interested in the dollar values that were in here as Councillor Simons identified, the $100,000, $150,000. So I embarked on a little bit of research of my own in relation to equipment. I was told by the Director of Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Porch, that the pile of the mulch chips we had at Orford is, in his best estimate, 150 cubic metres. It's been generated from approximately 600 cubic metres of raw material at a ratio of 4:1. My research has identified that there is a large machine. It's known as a bio-shredder chipper mulcher. It's a machine that produces 40 to 60 cubic metres per hour of product with a cutting width disc of 200 millimetres. It's a towable machine on an Australian road compliant trailer. The cost of the machine is approximately $225,000 ex-Melbourne. But even at this cost, I wonder could it produce significant cost benefit efficiencies on a rotational basis across the waste transfer stations, and perhaps hire it out to, maybe we could even hire it out to neighbouring councils who are probably having the same problems that we're having. This particular machine can be loaded by a grabber or excavator type thing, I guess, and has a very high hourly production rate. Having said all of that, I will support the motion today because I think it is a particularly good idea to give the product away, and it may go some way to reducing the angst towards council in relation to the cost of disposal of green waste. But I would ask that further investigation into our own machine is undertaken at officer level, with perhaps consideration being it being included in the next budget discussion next year.
Thank you, councillor Arnold. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Next item is on page 44, Coles Bay Electric Vehicle Charging Station Survey. Is there a motion? Councillor Churchill.
I move the council note the report and monitor the hall car park usage and review the visitor centre plans when approved for construction.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arnold. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, if I may, Mayor. Just to make the comment that, as the report says and everyone says, these things are coming. I guess what worries me a little bit here is when will that visitor centre actually be constructed and when will these EV chargers go in? But I suspect that it will be a longer time frame than has been implied. It'd be a bit sad if we have one of these things available to go in at the moment and we don't do it, and it sits there for 3 or 4 years without having an EV in Coles Bay. That is the part that worries me. But I guess I'm a person of little faith when it comes to these timeframes. So yeah, I'll go with the motion for the moment. Happy to put that motion.
Any other discussion on the matter? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against, carried unanimously. Next item, 8.6. The annual report, year 21 to 22. Is there a motion? It's overwhelming. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll move that the Mayor and General Manager's report be accepted and that the contents of the annual report for 2021-22 be endorsed.
Seconded, Councillor Churchill, thank you. Wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We did have this in a workshop, which is noted in the beginning of our agenda. I've just got to find the page now, sorry.
It's page 2 on the workshop. 124.
No, it's 119.
119 in the attachments. Yeah.
In the attachments, I mean.
Yep.
Yep. On page 5 of that attachment, message from the Mayor and General Manager. Sorry about this, councillors. So it's
all right. Take your time.
122, so
123.
124.
123, I think it is.
Me too.
On the right side, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs down, it says, thank you to the councillors who have made the responsible and difficult decisions to set Glamorgan Spring Bay Council on its fitness for the future path. And to your support of staff. We have a great team. I did ask that the word "the" be taken out of the thank you to the councillors, because to me that implies that there were some councillors supporting it and some not. We did have this issue a few years ago with regards to a report from a general manager, and there was a couple of ruffled feathers with regards to that word "the." So I was hoping that I did talk about it in the workshop, but it wasn't removed. And also on page 136 of the report, sorry guys.
Building and marine infrastructure. Deputy Mayor?
That's the
Yep.
one. If you look on the headings there, it's building and marine infrastructure, and underneath it says 120 council building. So the S needs to be brought back up onto the council building. Other than that, it was a good read.
General Manager, could we make those amendments? They're not very contentious, are they not?
I think we can, and I think if council is happy, can I through you, Mr. Mayor, just suggest then a reword to the general manager and the mayor's report on page 5.
I'd be content with that, General Manager.
Thank you to the council who have made responsible and difficult decisions.
Yeah,
Happy with that?
yeah.
Okay. Those amendments will be made, and thank you for raising the issue on page 136 as well, Deputy Mayor. I see what you mean there now.
Any further discussion? Oh, Councillor Arnold.
Could I just ask, how far through the process of having this printed are we?
This is a, this is a draft.
Right, okay, so
to
it
you, Mr. Mayor.
is it easily changeable or easily corrected in its current format?
Depending on what there is to
Well,
change.
No, it's not serious. It's really not serious. But despite my very best efforts to get some things corrected and the significant amount of time I spent in identifying some other areas, there still remains a couple of corrections that need to be done, which I can provide to council. It won't change the context of the report at all. It's only the correct name of an organisation that received a grant, some grant money. It's a couple of other grammatical errors that still remain in there. One of the things that we did talk about at the workshop, and I think there was general agreement, was that the photographs in the report should have identification, because as I said at the workshop, as councillors and staff, we're probably able to identify the areas that are photographed, but it doesn't follow that every reader will know the area. But as the Deputy Mayor said, it is a good read. And overall, it does provide a really good snapshot of the significant amount of work that this council has undertaken. So I'm happy to support the endorsement of the report.
Well, thank you very much for that, Councillor Arnold. I'm sure to discuss the matter with the General Manager. The little glitches could be attended to, rectification of typographical errors and grammatical errors shouldn't cause any trouble at all, apart from how far the printer is through printing it.
And if it
Which
doesn't,
might be total,
happen, Mayor, it doesn't
but,
matter.
Is there any other
Oh,
comments?
so,
on the
sorry,
matter?
through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just make,
Yeah,
would Councillor Arnold be okay if we also add the photographer's name? Because I took a lot,
No,
I took a lot of the
Yeah,
photographs.
well, with great respect,
No.
Mayor, and with General Manager, generally photographs, the
No.
photographer is given
No,
credit.
well, they won't be, but thank you. They won't be in this case, but thank you for raising that. It's
well,
fair,
Councillor
comment.
Arnold, I did not take any photographs.
Neither did I, Mr. Mayor. I'm the most dreadful photographer going.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an annual report. And on page 163 of the report, of the attachment, sorry, page 45 of the report is the auditor's, the independent auditor's report. As we around this table are all aware, I'm not going to be here from today on.
And we'll miss you.
I'm sure you will. Everybody said that, but I've spent the last 4 years, dealing with issues in relation to council. I've looked at 4 annual reports altogether, including the one prior to me becoming elected. And I have to say that the fact that I'm leaving is it's leaving me with a lot of sadness, really, because I'd like to continue on. But I am buoyed by the fact that what I see in this annual report is something that is far more acceptable to me than I saw in the first couple and what I saw before I became elected. What I am very pleased about is, for example, on page 163, the comment by the auditor in relation to the opinion that he's given, which reads as follows: A, in my opinion, the accompanying financial report, A, present fairly in all material respects Council's financial position as at the 30th of June 22 and its financial performance and its cash flows for the year then ended, and B, are in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and the Australian Accounting Standards. Now, of course, the qualification to that is that the auditor is provided the information by council, and we would assume that the information provided to the auditor is valid and relevant. It seems to me that the auditor is acknowledging the fact that council is providing financial information in relation to being audited for that. Ratepayers' money, remember. It's being presented fairly and in all material respects, council's financial performance and cash flows for the year are being presented properly. That gives me great satisfaction, and I can leave this council table with, if nothing else that's been achieved by this council, I can say that it's done a good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor Brady. I have had little input into this, but you and the other councillors who've been on this council longer than me deserve credit for all this work. Thank you very much for raising that. Now, can I move the motion? All those in favour of the motion, please raise their hand. Against? I declare the matter carried unanimously. Now, there are no notices of motion. Page 47. There are no petitions. Item 10, page 48. Page 49, questions from councillor. There's a question on notice from councillor Browning and a response. I won't ask the general manager to read out the question and the response. It's in the agenda for all to see on the public website. Item 11.2, are there any questions without notice by councillor?
Thank you.
Did I hear someone say?
Me.
Oh, yes. Me.
You-
Deputy Mayor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is not necessarily a question, it's a statement, and with your indulgence and councillors' indulgence, I'd like
Please
to
make the statement. We'll
say,
pretend it's
is
a
that
question.
okay? With council, thank you. So I address this to residents, ratepayers, councillors and the staff of Glamorgan Spring Bay. As this is my last meeting of this sitting council and possibly my last meeting as a councillor of Glamorgan Spring Bay, I'd like to say thank you for the privilege of being your representative and co-councillor. The past 4 years have been quite challenging for a number of reasons. In particular, the impact that COVID-19 has had on us all, not only in financial terms, but importantly on our mental health. The way that you, the community, handled all the restrictions thrown at you is to be commended. In terms of this council, we have seen the sudden resignation of our former mayor, councillor recounts due to councillor resignations, the revolving door of acting general managers and staff resignations, and of course the performance improvement direction issued to GSB from the Minister of Local Government, which this council worked hard to resolve and complete the directions given. Within this time, we recruited our new general manager, Mr. Greg Ingham, who has put together an almost completely new team within the administration arm of the organisation. During this time, I acknowledge how unsettling it would have been to all communities throughout the municipality. I thank you for your patience as we navigate our way through all the challenges. I also acknowledge that there were sometimes very hard and unpleasant decisions that had to be made for our council to continue and improve. I also acknowledge that there were times that we could have done better. All that being said, I'd like to recognise and thank all councillors, the General Manager, his staff, for the support that has been afforded me throughout this term of council. And there's not a truer saying for the past 4 years, but for me anyway, and that is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I wish for the incoming council of Glamorgan Spring Bay all the best. I've always found my position on council most rewarding, challenging, yes, but always rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well said, Deputy Mayor.
Much appreciated, and thank you for it.
Thank you.
Now, the next item deals with confidential issues. If it's passed, I'm going to ask the members of the public gallery, both of you, and thank you for your input, to leave the meeting.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much for being here.
Oh, best wishes for the future, all of you that.
Thank you very much. I will, confidential items, closed session. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you. I'll move that council moves into closed session at 3:53 p.m.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Robinson. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried unanimously. Now, we will turn